Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we dig into the sources you send us and try to find the real story. Today, we're strapping in, basically. It's all about Formula One, specifically that really intense, sometimes controversial battle inside McLaren. We're talking Lando Norris versus Oscar Piastri. Two incredibly exciting talents. Our job today: cut through the chatter, look at the cold, hard data from various F1 blogs, and figure out who really has the upper hand. We've got some great analysis here covering, well, everything qualifying, race day, consistency, and yeah, even the big mistakes.
It really is a classic teammate fight, isn't it? And, when you actually look at the numbers, the picture becomes, well, a lot more complex than just the final race results might suggest. We're not just looking at who finished where, but how they finished there, and what it all means for the championship and for McLaren, too.
Okay, let's jump right in then. Qualifying. Head-to-head, the raw score. It's 8-6 in favor of Oscar Piastri. Now, on paper, 8-6, that sounds pretty tight, right? Maybe even hints Norris is still slightly ahead overall.
Well, it seems close, yeah, 8-6. But what's really fascinating and quite dramatic, actually, is how those results came about, the margins. When Piastri's beaten Norris in qualifying, it's often been by a pretty chunky margin. He's really shown some serious pace.
Okay, like what? Give us some examples.
Right, so take China. Piastri was just significantly quicker. In the sprint qualifying, he was P3, Norris was P6. That's like 0.4 of a second difference. Huge in F1 terms. Then, in the main qualifying for the Grand Prix, Piastri actually put it on pole. Norris, P3, over a tenth back, and George Russell was even between them.
Wow, okay, so China was clearly Piastri's weekend on Saturday pace.
Definitely, across both sessions.
Yeah.
0.4, then over a tenth.
Yeah.
That's a serious gap between teammates.
Does the analysis from these F1 blogs suggest why he's finding that extra gear in qualifying?
It does hint at it, yeah. It suggests Piastri has really gotten to grips with squeezing that absolute peak performance out of the McLaren on a Saturday, which, is absolutely vital if you're fighting for wins and championships. It's not just doing a fast lap, it's doing it perfectly when it matters. And it wasn't just China. Look at Bahrain. Piastri got pole there too, by a massive 0.4 again.
0.4. Where was Norris?
Norris only managed P6. And the reports basically identified that as a really poor final lap in Q3. A definite error on his part, costing him big time.
Okay. Any others?
Imola, Piastri on pole again. Norris down in P4, nearly 0.3 slower. And Imola is a short track, so 0.3 is, well, it's a fair bit. Really underlines Piastri's one-lap speed.
So these aren't just marginal victories for Piastri. They're quite convincing statement-making quality performances. It suggests maybe more consistency from him in getting that ultimate lap.
Exactly. And it keeps going. Canada,
Yeah.
Piastri P3, Norris way back in P7, almost half a second adrift. Now, admittedly, Norris was faster in Q1 and Q2 in Canada, but he just could deliver in Q3. Another poor final session.
Right.
And then Belgium sprint qualifying, Piastri just demolished it. Pole by 0.6. 6 over Norris.
0.6 in a sprint quali. That's almost unbelievable between teammates in the same car.
It was a crushing performance, really. So yeah, the picture is when Piastri wins in quali, he often really wins big.
Okay, so what about the flip side? When Norris gets the better of Piastri, are those wins equally dominant?
Well, no, and that's the key contrast. When Norris has beaten Piastri, the margins have generally been absolutely tiny, razor thin. Like Japan, Norris was P2, Piastri P3.
Yeah.
The gap, just 32 thousandths of a second.
Thousands. Okay.
And Hungary, even closer. Norris ahead by only 15 thousandths. I mean, you can barely measure that. It's a blink of an eye.
So it's the way they're winning their qualifying battles that's different. Piastri with authority, Norris often just scraping by.
Precisely. It's the quality of the win, not just the tally. And you mentioned Norris struggling in Q3 sometime.
Yeah, Bahrain, Canada. Showing pace early, but not sealing the deal.
Exactly. The data points to that pattern. He shows great speed in Q1, Q2, but then maybe struggles to put that perfect lap together right at the end under maximum pressure.
Does that point to maybe a difference in approach or handling the pressure?
It's a really good question. Something the F1 blogs are definitely debating. Norris obviously has incredible speed, but maybe that final Q3 lap requires a slightly different approach, maybe dialing it back just enough to be clean. Or maybe his aggressive style is just harder to perfect when everything's on the line. Piastri, on the other hand, seems incredibly consistent at delivering a clean, fast lap in Q3. Maybe not always pole, but consistently strong. One analysis, looking at average qualifying delta across the season, actually put Piastri ahead by about 68 thousandths.
68 thousandths on average.
Yeah, and that average includes all the laps, which might actually dilute Norris's Q3 issues. If you only looked at the fastest Q3 laps, the gap in Piastri's favor might be even bigger.
So this really does raise the question, doesn't it? What does faster actually mean? This is the first year Piastri's consistently had the measure of Norris on Saturdays.
It is. It's a huge step in his development.
Yeah.
And it forces McLaren to think, right, they've got this new baseline speed from their younger driver. How does that influence car development?
So, bottom line in qualifying, the 8th-6 score looks close. But digging deeper, Piastri has really been the stronger force on Saturdays this season, often winning big, while Norris's wins are nail-biters.
That sums it up pretty well, yeah.
Okay, but then, here's where it gets really confusing, or interesting maybe. Despite that qualifying edge for Piastri, the championship points are incredibly tight. Piastri leads, sure, but only just 284 points to Norris's 275, that's 9 points. And race wins, they're tied, 7 wins each. So, does that 7-7 scoreline actually tell the true story of their race day performance, or is something else going on?
Well, much like the qualifying score, that 7-7 in race wins is also, let's say, quite misleading when you dig into it. Piastri has often shown stronger race pace, even in races he didn't actually end up winning.
Right.
Think back to the early season, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Miami. Piastri racked up wins there, often converting those strong qualifying positions. Remember Miami, McLaren got that rare double-double. It won the Strent and the main race. And Piastri was slightly ahead that weekend overall. A really strong run of form early on.
Okay, so he capitalized early. What about later races?
Spain, for example. Piastri just had better pace, controlled the race, and won. Norris had a poor start, recovered a second, but wasn't really challenging for the win. But it's the races Piastri didn't win where his underlying pace often stands out more. Imola is a prime example.
Ah, yes, Imola. What happened there again?
He looked quicker pretty much all weekend, but then just bad luck hit him hard. He had a really slow pit stop early on, like 3.6 seconds, which is ages in F1. And then a safety car came out at just the wrong time for him, basically handed Norris track position on fresher tires. Piastri was arguably robbed of a much better result, maybe even the win, despite having the pace.
That's racing, I suppose. Luck plays such a huge part sometimes. Did the blog suggest McLaren could have done better there? Pit stop issues? Strategy?
The analysis suggested McLaren's pit stops were generally okay, but Imola was just an unfortunate blip, not really systemic. But it highlights how fragile a race can be, and it kind of happened again at Silverstone, Great Britain. Piastri, again, arguably had the better race pace, looked set for the win.
Until the Verstappen incident.
Exactly. That bizarre, incomprehensible brake test incident, as some blogs called it. He got a penalty, dropped to second, and Norris inherited the win. Again, Piastri had the speed, but one moment cost him victory. Data highlighted Piastri often managed his tires better in long runs too, giving him stronger pace late in stints. But strategy or incidents sometimes negated that. Even Hungary and Belgium, often Piastri seemed to have the edge on pace, but strategy calls, like in Hungary, or Norris having one of those, let's say, erratic but fast Sundays like in Belgium, meant Norris took the win.
Right, so even some of Norris's wins have caveats.
Yeah.
What about his other victories? Australia, yeah,
Norris won that one. But only after Piastri made a mistake, ran wide, got stuck in the grass briefly.
Yep.
Norris had a similar off-track moment but managed to recover, so Piastri's error really opened the door for Norris there.
Okay, and Monaco,
yeah. That one seems pretty clear-cut. Norris genuinely looked superior that weekend, had a clear advantage, and won convincingly. Fair play there.
But the big one impacting the points, as you mentioned, is Canada.
Oh, absolutely. That was such a pivotal moment in their championship fight. Norris looked arguably quicker through the weekend. But then, late in the race, he tries that move on Piastri, described as incomprehensible by some analysts. They touch. Norris ends up in the wall. 0 points.
While Piastri finishes 4th, right?
Exactly. Norris himself admitted it was his mistake, which says a lot. But that single moment, a 12-point swing right there, that's a huge reason why the standings are as close as they are now.
So, putting it all together, Piastri often seems to have similar, maybe even better race pace. But the 7-7 win count doesn't show that because of luck, strategy calls, and critical errors on both sides, but maybe more impacting Piastri's potential wins.
That's a fair summary, yeah.
Yeah.
The narrative is much richer than just looking at the win tally. It really shows how fine the margins are, how many factors are at play beyond pure speed.
Which brings us to errors. Because, these F1 blogs describe the McLaren as an airplane this year. It's clearly very fast. So are both drivers really getting the maximum out of it? Let's talk mistakes, because they've definitely both made them. Who's been more prone to tripping up?
Yeah, good question. We can sort of split the errors into two types. The really big ones, let's call them grave errors that cost a load of points.
Okay.
And then the smaller mistakes, the mini errors, little track excursions, lockups, things like that. Now, interestingly, when you look at the big grave errors, they're actually quite evenly matched in terms of the points impact.
Really? Okay, break that down for us. PIASTRI'S grave errors.
Piastri's had two major ones, costing him roughly 30 points in total, according to the analysis. First was Australia, that off-track moment where he got stuck briefly. That was labeled a grave error. Cost him about 23 points compared to Norris winning that race.
23 points from one error. Wow.
Yep. And the second was Silverstone, that brake test incident with Verstappen. Cost him a clear shot at victory, about 7 points lost specifically for that race result. So yeah, 30 points total from those two big mistakes.
Okay, 30 points lost for Piastri from grave errors. What about Norris?
Norris also has two on his record, costing him slightly less, around 25 points total. First one was back in Saudi Arabia. He crashed in Q3 on his first run, had to start 10th as a result. That qualifying crash was deemed a grave error, costing him about 13 points relative to Piastri, who actually won that race. Set him back hugely.
Right, starting P10 when your teammate wins is costly.
Definitely. And the second one was Canada, which we just talked about. That collision with Piastri, crashing out, that was his second grave error, cost him 12 points directly compared to Piastri finishing fourth.
So 30 points lost for Piastri, 25 for Norris from the big mistakes. On the face of it, pretty similar impact from those major incidents.
Exactly. It almost cancels out in terms of the really big blunders.
But you mentioned mini errors, too. How do those factor in? What exactly counts as a mini error?
All right, so the grave errors are balanced, but the smaller mistakes, that's where the picture changes quite a bit. Lando Norris has made significantly more of these mini errors throughout the season. These are the moments that maybe don't end your race or cost you huge points instantly, but they chip away. A lockup, running wide, a messy first lap.
Right. Things that compromise a lap or lose a bit of time or track positions.
Exactly. They show maybe a driver pushing slightly over the limit more often or just less consistent execution lap after lap.
Can you give us some examples for Norris? What sort of things are we talking about?
Sure. Australia, even though Piastri had the bigger error, Norris also had a small off-track moment he recovered from. Still, a minor blip. China, a really poor sprint qualifying, followed by a mistake on lap 1 of the sprint race itself, lost him a bunch of places. Set the tone for that session. Bahrain, we mentioned the bad Q3 lap, costing him grid spots. Spain, a poor start, let Verstappen through immediately. Austria, a small track exit in the last corner. No huge consequence, but still an error. Belgium was littered with them, actually. A track exit at Pouhon, several messy braking moments. Even though he won, those errors potentially cost him an easier victory or maybe even opened the door for others. Hungary, a bad first lap, lost 2 places right away. So you see this pattern. Lots of small individual moments that just add up over the course of a season. They might not always make the headlines, but they represent lost performance potential.
That is quite a list of smaller incidents. How does Piastri stack up in comparison on the mini error front? Is he making similar small mistakes?
Well, this is where it's really stark, actually. Piastri's record on mini errors is remarkably clean. The F1 blogs really emphasize his consistency here. Apart from his 2 big errors in Australia and Silverstone, there are very, very few examples of significant mini errors linked to him. The analysis might mention perhaps being a bit tentative against Verstappen at the Imola start, or maybe a slightly subpar qualifying in Monaco compared to Norris. But it's really nothing like the list for Norris.
Right.
He was close to touching Norris in Austria and Hungary in wheel-to-wheel fights, but crucially, he avoided contact, didn't make the mistake. It suggests a very measured, consistent approach, almost unnervingly clean sometimes.
So while the big headline errors roughly balance out in points cost, Piastri has been far, far cleaner in avoiding the smaller, nagging mistakes day-to-day, race-to-race.
Exactly. Norris has those flashes of brilliance, maybe pushes the absolute limit more often, but it comes with this higher background level of small errors. Piastri seems much more controlled, more consistent in execution, even if maybe not always extracting that final 100th in every single situation.
Yeah.
That consistency, combined with the qualifying edge and often strong race pace, really builds a compelling case for his overall performance this year, despite the close points.
Okay, so let's try and tie this all together. We've looked at the sources, the F1 blogs, the data, and the picture emerging seems to be Oscar Piastri, faster in qualifying, often significantly so, generally showing better or comparable race pace, and crucially, far fewer minor errors, much more consistent.
That seems to be what the deep dive into the data suggests, yes.
Yeah.
A really impressive season from him, building significantly on his rookie year.
And yet, Despite all that, he's only 9 points ahead in the championship standings. 9 points.
Which leads to a really provocative thought, doesn't it? Consider this. Lando Norris could, perhaps should, actually be leading this championship right now. If you just take away that one single critical, self-admitted error in Canada, he threw away 12 points right there. That swing alone flips the championship lead.
Wow. Yeah, that really puts it into perspective. Despite Piastri's underlying strengths this season, Norris is right there, potentially only behind due to one major lapse.
It just highlights the incredibly fine margins in Formula One, doesn't it? One moment, one bad decision, one slice of luck or misfortune can completely change the narrative of a season, especially in a close teammate battle like this.
It really does. So what stands out most to you about their performances this year? And maybe more importantly, what do you think the final stretch, the last 10 races, hold for this McLaren pairing? Who comes out on top? We'll leave you, the listener, to ponder that one. Lots to think about there.